Welcome to the Scoop World Order. We have a huge Monday night show cranked up tonight. There is a ton of news in the world of college football. We have a November night game, which is going to be fantastic. 7:30 kickoff versus Michigan State on the 11th of November, which is the latest night game I think in Ohio State history, at least in modern times. There might have been one in the 18 or the early 1900s, but super excited about that. We've got Dylan Raiola, our former buddy, is going to be a Georgia Bulldog. How does that affect J.J. Smith? We're going to dig into that a little bit. We checked with some great sources. I think you guys are going to be very happy with our answer. And we're going to look at two phenom. I'm talking phenom. Caleb Williams-esque 2025 quarterbacks that Ohio State is zeroed in on pretty hard. So we're going to watch their film, break them down. As always, thank you guys for joining us tonight. We love doing this with you guys. Again, if you enjoy this content, leave us a like. Shout out where you guys are from. As always, that's my favorite. I love seeing where you guys are watching from. We got in Alaska the other day. We got Hawaii. I mean, we're international, baby. It is great because we're hitting Europe. We're hitting Asia. So we love seeing where you guys are watching from. Again, we appreciate you guys' time. If you enjoy this content immensely, click that little bell. You'll get an alert on your phone when we go live. Again, we need you guys. We love working with you guys when we do these live shows because you guys bring some outstanding questions. So we compliment you guys on being so knowledgeable about football, and especially about Ohio State football. So thank you for all that. But yeah, we love doing this with you guys. Without further ado, gonna bring in my good friend Nevada. Nevada, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, man. It's a good sports night for the off season. Got a lot of stuff going on, lots of exciting things going on, and anytime we have Dylan Raiola stuff to talk about, that's one of my favorite topics is the old Dylan Raiola stuff. So let's get it on.
Yeah, I didn't think there was any other place he'd end up other than Georgia. If USC didn't have Malachi Nelson, that would have been the most ideal spot for him, just because, if I'm Dylan Raiola, there's two guys I'd want to play for, Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley, because those guys know how to make a quarterback into a number one overall pick or a top 5 pick or a top 10 pick. It's a proven thing. The infrastructure is there. The wide receivers are there. The locations are great. The conferences that they play against are weak. So it's kind of all, those are the two top spots. But, Georgia obviously they're the premier program in college football, 2 straight national championships, Kirby Smart. But I would be scared to death if I was Dylan Raiola and I committed to Georgia because, they go through offensive coordinators pretty quickly just because, when you're working with Kirby Smart or Nick Saban or a defensive guy who's a grader and a guy who's really tough on his offensive coaches, those guys don't stay long. Like Todd Monken was there for a year and he went off to the NFL and he's like, yeah, I'm done with this guy. I won his national championship. They have all kinds of talent in place and he's just like, yeah, I'd rather go to the pros or whatever. So Dylan might have a couple offensive coordinators during his tenure in Athens. So I don't know what he's thinking. For me, if I'm a quarterback, I want to go where the head coach is an offensive guru like Ryan Day, like Lincoln Riley, and that guy's going to be there. They both have long-term extensions. They have huge contracts. Like it locks in basically, who for your 3 or 4 years when you're playing, who you're going to be playing for. But Nevada, any shock that Dylan Raiola ended up at Georgia?
Well, let's put it this way. It's not a shock to me that he didn't end up at USC because he was not going to compete with those guys. I've seen those guys, and he wouldn't go on there. Did I think Nebraska had a chance? Yeah, maybe. Georgia made a lot of sense for all the reasons. But I just have to say this about Dylan, and I haven't felt this way about many kids, but there's just something that's just truly, truly inauthentic about Dylan Raiola. And I think the last kid that I felt was this inauthentic was probably Sugar Shane Morris. Just kind of the false bravado and the stuff. And it's funny how, when somebody kind of gets that thing where you're just like, man, I am just not buying anything that you're saying. And that, and this isn't he's not coming to Ohio State. I'm like, my favorite NFL player of all time was Charles Woodson. And Charles Woodson went to Michigan, and I hate him when he was at Michigan. Loved him when he was on the Packers. Could totally respect his game. So it's not just that he's not going to Ohio State type of thing. But today when Dylan made his announcement and he brought up the gal that died, tragically in the car accident, and that being, I was just like, oh, you got to be kidding me. He's going to play the girl that died in the car accident card on this thing, and he did it. And it happened, and I was just like, man, Dylan Raiola belongs in the inauthentic Hall of Fame for this because it was so predictable he was going to go there, and he went there, And as soon as I saw that, I was just like, man, I can't wait to talk about this in the podcast because it just, I don't know why it struck a nerve with me, but it did. So I was going to share that.
Yeah, because again, maybe he meant well, but I just think it's an opportunist kind of thing to do to throw her on the graphic and put a little halo on her head. And again, that's fine. Again, whatever he wants to do, but he probably met her one or two times, and he ends up going to Ohio State and probably never want to talk to her again. But again, I met the kid a few times. I think he's a beta. Like I don't think he's an alpha. And again, I don't care. I'm not trying to be whatever. And it's not because he's going to Ohio State. Like I felt like that way when he was coming to Ohio State. Like I met him and I didn't feel that Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, like I'm going to slice your throat and kill you to beat you kind of mentality that I've seen. Like, a guy like Terrell Pryor was ultimate competitor, a guy that, he's an alpha. Troy Smith was an alpha. Like I've seen quarterbacks that are alphas. I've seen guys that are betas, and give me the alpha every time. If your quarterback's not an alpha, good luck. I mean, it's going to be tough to win. A natty or be as high level as you want to be. And I think that's something that I think Aaron Nolan could be an alpha. I really do. I think that he's got something to him. He's tough. He's a leader. He's a kid that just beat out Jaden Davis for an Elite 11 invite. So, and again, he's going to go toe to toe with Dylan Raiola. Dylan Raiola's got all the hype, but it's kind of, and I'm not saying air is CJ Stroud, but it's kind of CJ Stroud-ish, where nobody really thinks that. I mean, we think highly of Aaron Nolan, but it wasn't like people were kicking down his door. He had Georgia, Bama, but they already have quarterbacks committed, and Georgia was holding a seat for Dylan. But they're all going to see each other at the Elite 11 in California in a month. So we'll see how Air does. We'll see how Dylan does. But I feel like Air is ascending, and I feel like Dylan. He's okay, but he's on his third high school in 3 years, and he's kind of been dramatic with the recruiting process and whatever. So, and again, in the era of the transfer portal, are guys going to sit still and work, or are they going to go and be opportunistic and leave? Because he's already gone to 3 different high schools. He's decommitted from Ohio State after being Bobby Buckeye and wearing all the gear. Now he's on to Georgia. Again, I don't know why on earth you'd go play at Georgia if you're a superstar quarterback, because again, I would want to go play for an offensive guru like Ryan Day. I would want to throw it to JJ Smith and Brandon Ennis and Carnell Tate, because that's like easy mode. And plus, you're playing in the Big Ten. You're playing the Big Ten. You're playing against Indiana, Purdue, Michigan State, teams that you're just going to dog walk every single year you play them because your receivers are so good. Instead, you're going to go down to the SEC now. You're going to be playing Bama. You're going to be playing LSU. You're going to be playing Florida. And those schools get dudes. The Big Ten. The only team that has any guys that we've offered is Michigan. They got a couple, but you go to Ohio State, you have a dramatic talent advantage every week. And you have Ryan Day calling the plays, you have Brian Hartline coaching the receivers. So again, if you're a quarterback and you don't come play for the battery of Ryan Day and Brian Hartline, I think you're absolutely insane. The only other place I'd consider would be USC because of Lincoln Riley and how prolific he is. But Malachi Nelson's blocking that spot because Dylan ain't beating out Malachi. There's no chance. So, but we're gonna kind of dovetail this into the JJ Smith quandary. Is something that I've been hit up on a million times on Twitter, on BuckeyeScoop.com's message board. Everyone's worried about JJ Smith. I'm going to toss this film on because I think JJ is the best player in the country. I don't think it's close. He's a guy that I just think he's a Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones type of guy. A guy that Ohio State fans need to get really, really excited about. But Nevada, how are you feeling about JJ? He's going to take an official visit to Georgia. Same weekend as Dylan. Any nerves there at all?
No nerves. RELAX, relax. Everybody take a deep breath on this one. When you read any stuff about this or you hear anything anywhere, just like harken back. Nevada, I don't often say this, but don't worry. Do not worry at all about this one. This one's in the barn. This one's going to be fine. Even in the age of NIL, even in the age of craziness and all the stuff that could go on, don't worry. Ohio State's got this one on lockdown. Going to be a great Buckeye. Going to be a leader of the class and going to be a terrific player for us to all enjoy. So no worries. He's just having fun taking these other visits. Don't give it a second thought.
Yeah, like I don't worry about it because if I'm him, I'm taking 5 officials because it's 5 weekends of, basically getting, you get awesome food. You get to go eat these awesome places. You get to see kind of the the coaches. And plus, like, you never know, like, if you're at a program like Georgia or Florida, or you don't know where these coaches end up, because you might be in the NFL one day, and one of these guys is your position coach or your head coach or whatever. Like Kirby Smart may be coaching the Falcons in a few years. Like, you never know. So it doesn't hurt to be courteous. Frankly, I think in the era of NIL, it's crazy if you're a stone cold superstar, you shouldn't commit early. I would wait till signing day. I'd want all of the auction figures on the table. I'd have, Drew Rosenhaus or whoever his agent is. Anderson Tate have Rosenhaus, so I'd imagine JJ's gonna have Rosenhaus. I'd say, hey, let's see that NIL money. Let's see where it's at. Because the longer you're uncommitted, the bigger your package is going to be. And at the end of the day, like, you want a package that's going to choke an elephant. In terms of what you're going to get as your NIL bundle. Because Carnell Tate shows up, new car. Jelani Thurman shows up, new car. Brandon shows up, new car. And they're not driving, a Honda Accord like I did in college. They're driving like new Hellcats and, Trackhawks and, $100,000 cars. And, they're usually leases from car dealerships. But, if you're JJ Smith, I mean, your number is whatever these guys want to write down on the piece of paper. Because Georgia, if their NIL fund is going to go nuts, then hey, ours is going to go right back at it, because we've been killing it in NIL recently. I don't think people realize how good we're getting at NIL. We've got a couple of lead dogs that are paying these guys, and but Nevada, do you think that there's some equity? Because we've talked about this in the past offline. Does our fan base appreciate these kids more when they commit like on signing day or later, or they put the hats on the ground? Like Terrell Pryor, like if Terrell Pryor commits as a sophomore, does he still get the tidal wave of hype that he got when he postponed his signing day and signed late? And I don't know. I feel like if you're JJ and you put the Georgia hat and the Clemson hat and the Miami Hurricanes hat and the Bama hat all on the table, and then you pick the Ohio State hat, people like remember that and they like cherish that. Am I crazy saying that?
No, I mean, I think that's a real thing. I think, with great power comes great responsibility. And when you do that, you draw that attention. There's certainly, a lot more hype that comes along with you, but there's absolutely no question that from a value perspective, fans value late commitments way, way, way more than earlier. Earlier ones don't count as much. They might be 20% as valuable as ones that you get late in the program. I mean, for years, the rap on Ohio State used to be they can't close. They can't get them on signing day, and they get all their commitments early. And somehow this was like signing day was a disappointment, because you could almost remember the guys that we got on signing day as opposed to the ones that we got earlier. And no, it's definitely primacy and recency. It's a very real thing, and it's like psychology. And I think with Ohio State fans, I just make it easy on myself. I get excited about each and every recruit, because I just never know who's going to be the superstar and who's going to turn out to be the bad ones. Certainly, there's ones you can be a little bit more excited about, but I'm excited about everyone, and it just makes it easier on me.
Yeah, I think that's the best mentality to have, because you never know who's going to turn into Pat Elflein or, I mean, God, even CJ Stroud. Like, CJ Stroud was like the number 2 quarterback. He took Jack Mellors like a sophomore, out of Pinnacle out in Arizona, and thought he was going to be the first round pick. And then they took CJ as the throwing guy, and it was kind of like Justin Zwick and Troy Smith. Like, one guy was the next Peyton Manning, and the other guy was like an athlete from Cleveland. And we saw how that panned out. And I think that's a very natural thing. We got a super chat. D Sonny, my man, I appreciate you as always. He's probably the leader in super chat, Spence. So appreciate you, brother. Talking about alphas, I'll let you do this one first, Nevada. Since the Cooper era, what Ohio State players do you think just naturally demanded attention from teammates, coaches, and fans? Or do you want me to do that? Because I've kind of been around these guys a little bit more. Do you want to take it first, or do you want me to go?
I'll let you start, and then I'll correct your ones, because I'm going to correct the All-American 4-year starter or Ohio State. I'm going to correct you on who was really the alphas.
Okay, that's perfect. So number 1 all-time alpha, AJ Hawk. Not a talker, quiet guy, but just he's like one of those guys who just have like an aura around him. And again, he's a guy that I talk to a lot. I text a lot. He's a guy that I still, like, to this day, like, there aren't guys that I respect more than AJ Hawk in the history of the program. Just the way he carried himself, how he worked, how tough he was. Just A+ across the board. James Laurinaitis was like that. He was kind of AJ's understudy. Schleggs, he wasn't to the level of James and AJ just because he wasn't there as long. But Dante Whitner was a great one. Just trying to think of who else. Nick Mangold, Troy Smith. A great one on offense that doesn't get nearly the amount of love that he deserves is Santonio Holmes. Santonio was a guy that, I mean, that's the guy you want in the dark alley with you. That's the guy that you want to lead the team out of the tunnel. I mean, he's a guy that should have been a captain. He would have been in this day and age where we have redshirt sophomores as captains. He'd have been a captain. Pittman was a good one. But yeah, we had some really good alpha dog leaders. I'd say Jack Mewhort, some guys that I coached, Jack Mewhort, Norwell. Johnny Simon was a great one. Like a guy that just natural leader, tough as nails. I think on this year's team, Tommy Eichenberg for sure. I think Jack Sawyer, I think JT, Paris Johnson was an alpha for sure. Because I talked to all these kids and, it's the best way to evaluate these kids is what do your peers say about you? It's not what the media people do. It's not what the coaches do. It's what your teammates say about you. So, the players, one of the greatest adages in all of football is that the players know who the players are and who's hard to go against, who's tough to block, who locks you up as an offensive tackle, offensive guard. And those guys will say some surprising names. You'd be stunned. It'd be some guys, sometimes they're not starters or they should play more. And you'll be like, wow, you think that guy's really good? And then a lot of times it's a, you there, Nevada? Oop. We are back live. So my stuff cut out. So, but anyways, 1 second. You in here, Nevada?
I am here.
Yeah, we dropped for a second, but we're back at it now. So who are your alphas?
Well, first of all, I'd like to apologize to Cade Stover for Mr. Barton not referring to you as an alpha right there.
I knew I was going to forget one.
Yeah, Cade, you are indeed an alpha. You are indeed an alpha.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Cade on the recent influences definitely get it for sure.
Yeah. No, he's a great call. Like he's fantastic, and you're dead right on that one. Anyone else that I missed? I'd say. All right. Let me see. Sorry, we got Nevada back in. Anyone else that I missed? Nevada. Nevada, you there? Well, I'd go, if you want to go back in the day, Orlando Pace for sure. Eddie George for sure. I've heard him give a speech. It was fantastic. So, there's some really good names in the history of Ohio State. Again, that's a fantastic question. Nevada, do you have any other names to add to the list? We've got some JJ. We're going to go some quarterbacks now. Let me see. Where is JJ from? Yeah, JJ's from Chaminade, Madonna. He's an outstanding talent. We got I'm not worried about JJ at all. Unless Brian Hartline leaves, then all bets are off. But I'm not worried about JJ from an NIL perspective or any other perspective. But yeah, Archie was one. John Hicks was one. There's been a lot of alphas in the 120 years of Ohio State football. I don't know how far back I want to go, but James and AJ are the two guys that are at the top of my list.
Mr. Barton, CJ Stroud, alpha or not alpha?
Not an alpha, I don't think.
Not an alpha.
And again, I'm not trying to be a hater, but I've been around him enough, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, not everybody can be an alpha because that's why you're an alpha. So I think, I think Justin Fields was. Haskins, I don't think so. Troy Smith was for sure. Terrell was for sure. JT Barrett absolutely was an alpha. An alpha is are you a leader? Are you a guy that galvanizes the team? Are you a guy that has that aura that people want to follow you into battle and you can get them guys gassed up and have them play to a level that they're not usually used to playing at. So, did CJ do that? I mean, maybe, but I mean, I think that our offensive talent was so overwhelming that, it'll be interesting to see what Kyle McCord or Devin Brown do this year with similar profile receivers with Marvin and Emeka and, Carnell Tate, Julian Fleming, these guys. But, I don't think CJ was an alpha. And again, that's not a crack on CJ. He was still a captain, but when you're a captain, you got to go win some games. You got to go win a Big Ten title. You got to go beat Michigan, and being close doesn't count. I was close to being a 2-time national champion, and neither of them happened. So, but I got a couple of Big Ten rings. I got 6 pairs of gold pants, so those count. Anyone else? I'd say Kenny G might be. Kenny G's killing it at Arkansas right now. Kenny Guyton. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any other guys. Will Smith is a great one. He might actually be above AJ. That's the one I didn't even think of. But Will Smith was a bad man, and I love Will. God rest his soul. But he's probably at the top of the alpha list. But that's a great question. Appreciate you, my man. Do you have any other ones, Nevada?
Todd Beckman, Ray Small. Just trying to think. Going through my
Rob Rose, your boy Corey Smith.
Oh gosh, Corey, good old Corey.
Going back,
Corey
back in time.
Corey, if you want any good equipment to use athletic equipment, go to Corey. Corey's the guy.
He really is. So we're gonna break into some 2025 quarterbacks that are really taking off right now. Bryce Underwood is a guy that Bill Green is close to calling to Ohio State. So I think that this future cast is a little out of date, but he's the number 1 quarterback in the country for 2025. I think he's the best player in the country for 2025. We watched his film. He is absolutely tremendous. But it's interesting. Ohio State sent a big a crew down to Tennessee to see George McIntyre, who is a kid. Really, he is like the prototype 6'5", 200. He's over 200 now. He's listed at 180 on this, but he's like a Peyton Manning type of kid. He's projected to Tennessee. I'm sure Tennessee's going to throw an absolute fortune at this kid to be their quarterback. But Nevada, and then we've got the Ryan Montgomery. Obviously, is the local kid from Findlay. But who's your pick? Is it Bryce Underwood? Because I just feel like you get that guy, it's game over.
Yeah, no, I was always fond of EJ Underwood. So when I saw Bryce Underwood, I was like, man, I'm going with that guy. It's like I like those kind of do it all type of quarterbacks, and Bryce definitely fills that spot for me. And I think in today's modern college football, that's the prototype that you're looking for. And I think having those guys that can do it all and challenge a defense with their legs, with their arm, tough running guys, those alpha leaders. Those are the guys that I want on my modern college football team. And whether they only give you a year or 2 years or whatever it is, it's not like an NFL team where you're trying to build a franchise around them. You're worried about hits and worried about durability and things like that. This is college football. You get as much as you can, as quickly as you can, and that to me that means dual threat quarterback. So that's where I'd be going.
Oh, I totally agree, and I think it's silly to save these guys, and protect them for the NFL. And we gotta make sure he doesn't get hurt because we gotta go win some championships. Starting with the Big Ten, which used to be a layup at Ohio State, it hasn't been a layup the last few years. On to winning national championships, and the quarterback's got to do what the quarterback's got to do. I know that we think that these quarterbacks are made out of porcelain and they're little soft babies, but Cardale Jones won the national championship because he ran versus Bama. If he doesn't run and scramble versus Bama, we don't beat Bama. He had some huge scrambles versus Bama. And again, when you're playing Indiana and you're playing Rutgers and you're playing Purdue and you're playing Michigan State and all these terrible teams in the Big Ten, yeah, you don't have to run the quarterback then. But like when you need it, like against Georgia, C.J. Stroud took off and ran. It makes you so much harder to defend. So like when it's Michigan, it's Penn State, it's Georgia, it's playoffs. Like it's time to roll. You can wrap them in porcelain the rest of the season and protect them as much as we do. But at some point, you got to go win a football game. And again, when you're playing Rutgers and Purdue, you can throw it to Mitch Rossi on the 1 yard line and do all that kind of cute stuff. But eventually, you got to go win the games and you got to run the quarterback. And this is a kid. He's built like a brick house. He's got tremendous touch, and he's got jets. This guy can fly. So again, that's what I want in a college football weapon, like the ultimate weapon, is a guy that terrifies the defense both through the air and on the ground. Because I think if you can do it on the ground, it makes you a million times harder to stop. I I know the pass rushers I talked to, Joey and Nick Bosa, the guys I talked to, they hate mobile quarterbacks. They hate getting close to Kyler Murray or guys like that, and then they can scamper away. And then you go from a sack to the guy, converts a 3rd and 10 and gets a 12-yard scramble. So, I just, for me, when I'm recruiting a quarterback, I want the most dynamic player possible, most dynamic weapon. I think that's what happened in Carolina. Carolina went Bryce Young. Bryce Young's he's a little bit better runner, and he's a midget. He's a slight dude, but he's like Allen Iverson on the football field. He can create, he can get loose, and as long as he doesn't ever get hit, he'll be fine. But I worry that he's too small. But Carolina could have taken CJ Stroud, and they took the guy that wasn't as pure of a thrower, but he's a better weapon, and he was a Heisman winner at Bama. But yeah, I love watching these films. I'll throw the other one on in a second, but yeah, it's funny. Our whole chat, and in this chat, I want you guys to write who are your alphas, because I'm seeing Antoine Winfield, great one. I'm seeing Braxton, maybe, I don't know. Carlos Hyde, maybe. Mike Doss, absolutely alpha. Matt Wilhelm was a good one. Tim Anderson. I mean, like I said, so there's a lot of guys you can name going through the years. Like Chris Gamble, for instance. Like, I don't think Chris Gamble was an alpha. I think he was one of the best players in school history, but did he really have that alpha presence where he wanted to be a leader, or was he more of a guy that just kind of wanted to do his own thing and be in the background? And I think that's just kind of what he was. And again, he's a 1st-round pick. He's one of the greatest players in school history. So it's not like a slight. It's just kind of a personality trait. Like, are you a guy that wants to be, the guy who's up front leading? And again, it's not a knock on Chris Gamble. I think Chris Gamble's maybe the best corner. He's the best corner I ever played with by far. Then he played, 12 years in the league, and he retired, and he's a dominant player. But Nate Clements, I played with him in the league. He was definitely an alpha. Anyone else about it? We're getting a lot of this alpha stuff going. This is a great question.
Yeah, I love going back to the old alpha, the Jim Stillwagons and some of the great ones from the.
That's a major one right there.
Yeah, the Jack Tatums and stuff like that. But no, Ohio State. I remember a little guy, Burt Carton, that was kind of he was an alpha and got a tree in the grove now.
I'm telling you, when you got to take over as a captain after we get smoked by Florida, you better be an alpha, because everybody's looking around like you got hit with a nuclear bomb and the program's falling apart. So someone's got to come to the front and start rolling, because it ain't fun when you got to live in Columbus and you get smoked in the national championship game. You better rally the troops, especially when all your boys take off, because that's tough. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm not worried about JJ Smith. I talked to some great JJ Smith sources, and I was the first one. I was like, if I was a kid, I'd go on every visit. In the era of NIL, man, it's like, if you want to go to Ohio State, but you can get, a bigger compensation package, do it. Screw it. Why not? But I have no worries about him. Sean Springs, great alpha. Rex Kern, John Brockington, Cam Hayward, great alpha. Again, you guys are killing it with this alpha comments. Appreciate you guys. God, you guys are bringing up some great names. Again, I was just trying to go from guys I directly played with and guys that I coach, and some recent guys, but you guys could go back to the 50s. Mo C, absolutely. I did say Orlando Pace. I said Orlando Pace is an alpha. So
first Cade Stover, now Orlando Pace. Exactly.
I said he was. I said he was an alpha. You forgot him, Orlando. I apologize. I apologize for Nevada forgetting about Orlando Pace as an alpha.
This is horrible. It. Yeah, this is terrible. Yeah.
Well, and again, you can disagree. Larry, that's fine. CJ played great against Georgia. Again, he's a guy that, he did all he could, and, but again, that being a beta, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a personality trait. There's guys that are better as leaders and guys that are better followers, in my opinion. And again, in my opinion, it could be completely wrong. CJ might win 10 Super Bowls and be the greatest. He might be, the greatest leader in, General Patton by the time he's done in the career. But I just never saw it. And again, that's That's just me. When you're the quarterback, man, you better be the guy that is the guy. And, did he galvanize guys and make guys go like Troy Smith did and carry us like Troy Smith did? I don't think so. I mean, again, Troy beat really good Michigan teams. He beat, won Big Ten titles, took over an offense that stunk in 2004 and led us in 8. We were 8-4, which is terrible, but, we beat a Michigan team that was double-digit favorites in the horseshoe. And then, so again, it is what it is. Eddie for sure. Yeah, Justin Fields for sure. Eddie George gave the greatest speech in Ohio State history before the 2005 Michigan game in the locker room up in Ann Arbor. And it was like, he melted the paint off the walls because he said the F word so many times, but it was awesome. And none of us were expecting it. He wasn't the honorary captain. He wasn't he just stepped up and, he was on the sideline. And he even said, I talked to him about that at an event about 2 years ago. And I said, hey, what possessed you to go crazy in the locker room? And he was like, I wasn't planning on saying anything, but he was down on the field during pregame, while we were warming up, he was kind of on the sideline. And the Michigan fans just provoked him. And it was they woke up like a demon. And Eddie went crazy in the locker room. And I always loved Eddie George as a kid, but after that speech, I was like, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. So, I mean, thank you, Eddie. And again, that's the guy I'd love to get him on my podcast because that was incredible. It's one of those things where I would have killed to have had, these kids today, they all have their phones and Instagram Live and all that now, but I didn't have that. But I was like, God, plus my hands were taped and we were ready to go, play Michigan. So I don't really care about recording a speech, but wow, was that a good speech. The guys that I talked to that were in that locker room that night or that, before that noon game, it was wild. I'm going to pull up this kid from Tennessee's film. Nevada, they announced that Michigan State is going to be a night game this year. And it's November 12th. That's got to be the latest night game in Ohio State history, no?
I mean, that's the latest one that I can remember. That's that's going to be something else. I mean, that is going to be something else. That's going to be fun. That's going to be a fun one. I love those 3:30 games. I love those night games. I love those late games. I think the fans just have a chance to get all liquored up and all fired up all day, and you watch all the other ones, and by the time the game rolls around, man, it's banging. So no, that's going to be a fun one.
So in the chat or in the comments right now, I want you guys to comment when we're playing a good team, like Michigan State. We waxed them last year. They used to be a really good team when they were a playoff team under Mark D'Antonio. They've been down for a while now. But what is your favorite time for a college football game? And you can do it two ways. You can do it on TV, and you can do it if you're attending a game in the horseshoe. Because for me, if I'm home, I don't care. 8 o'clock's fine, noon's fine, whatever. But if I'm going, I like noon. So I'll dodge all of the fruit and the shrapnel that's going to get thrown at me for saying that. But I love noon games. I loved them as a player. I loved them as a coach. I love them as a fan. It is incredibly quiet and boring in the horseshoe during these noon games. But I like them because I get to get home and watch the night games, because I like to study football and we like to podcast and that. But Nevada, what is for a prime time big game, like we're playing Michigan or Oregon, if they made you the head of scheduling, what time would you play the big, when Alabama comes in September in a few years, or Georgia comes, or Texas comes in a few years? What time do you want those games played at?
I mean, I like 3:30. I mean, I've always been a big fan of the 3:30 game. I think it's kind of a classic window for college football. I think it's late enough that later in the year it gets dark and it gets cold. Like I said, the 06 Michigan game, in my opinion, the most significant game ever to be played in the stadium, 3:30 start. Never forget that. That was just an amazing time. I like 3:30, but again, if you had to go back and say, hey, noon or 8 p.m., I'm always going 8 p.m. I'm always going for those later starts, and I like the fact that on the later starts, you got the eyes of the whole world on you. It's from a recruiting standpoint, kids have a chance to get in from the West Coast. From an exposure standpoint, the brand just gets exposed across America to everybody. Everybody's done playing their games and are all watching yours. So I think that's a win-win-win for Ohio State. But I think you've educated me a lot about the challenges from a player's perspective of playing these games and how it messes with your preparation, and having multiple games like this, whether they be home or away, can affect you as the season goes on. So yeah, I'm aware that it's a double-edged sword, and I'm aware that when you're playing 5 road games or 6 road games or whatever it might be, that's different than playing a season where you're 8-4, between home and away games too. So lots to consider, but I'm still going with that late afternoon or evening start from my standpoint.
Well, yeah, like for me, so I'm going to break it down even more granular. If we're playing that Oregon, Bama, Texas, I want that at 8 o'clock at night because you get the most kids in for recruiting. It's huge for recruiting. Atmosphere is electric. Like when we played Texas at 8 o'clock in '05 at the Shoe, that was electric and I loved it, but when they do these games, like we play like Akron at 8 o'clock kick, or we play Rutgers as an 8 o'clock kick, like I hate that. Cause then, Ohio State fans have to go watch Ohio State beat the tar out of Rutgers or Akron. And on the other network, it's Alabama versus LSU or Alabama versus Texas or like some really good game. So like like if it's that marquee, because we got some big ones. We got Georgia coming, Bama coming, Texas is coming in a couple years. Like I want those at 8 o'clock, September, 8 o'clock. I can do that. It's early in the season. You're not all beat to crap and tired like you are at the end of the season. It's a home game, also great. But we put some of these stupid games at like 7 o'clock kick, 7:30 kick, 8 o'clock kick, and it's like, we played Akron as a night game the other, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what? That's a noon game all day long because the fans don't want to go to a crappy night game blowout. They don't want to go. If it's Wisconsin, yeah, Penn State, yeah. But they put these Rutgers games, and it's hard when you're Ohio State because you have to remember when you're Ohio State, you are the premier game on every single schedule. So when you're the premier game on every single schedule, then guess what? When you play at Rutgers or you play at Indiana, they always want you to be the night game because that's the game that they sell to the donors. That's the one they sell to the season ticket holders. That's the one that they sell to, when they're trying to fundraise, they're trying to get recruits in. Hey, come watch the Buckeyes at Bloomington, 8 o'clock kick on Fox or whatever. Like, so we get screwed because we have to play all these road games at night. And again, for those of you that haven't, played and I assume most of you guys probably didn't play. If you guys did play college football, please chime in the chat. But when you do an 8 o'clock kick and we played Iowa in '06 at 8 o'clock or 8:30, I mean, it was a late kick. And man, we didn't get home till 4:30 in the morning. Cause you play a game for 3 hours and it's great if you're, in your basement watching it or in your living room watching it with your buddies and tailgating and eating pizza and stuff. But when you're a player, you get done with the game, it's midnight, Central Time, and then you have to, shower. Everybody's getting on the bus. You take the bus to the airport, go through TSA, load up the plane. The plane has 1,000 people. It's not just a football team and coaches. There's donors. There's the athletic administration. There's all these Tom, Dick, and Harrys that all show up for every single game. I don't know what they do or why they're there, but they're just kind of along for the ride. A lot of it's fundraising because a lot of them they're big time donors. They like to fly with the team and. Like Gene Smith and his crew, they usually fly on a private jet home because they're not about that 4 a.m. life like we are. But it's tough, because then the next day, if you get home at 5 a.m. and you go to bed, you're probably going to wake up at noon. And, Ryan Day and Urban, they used to stop bringing the guys in on Sunday. They start bringing them in on Monday. And when you're a player, you'd rather practice on Sunday the day after the game because it's a really easy, light practice and you get your film work done. And then Monday is your off day because they have to give you one day where there's nothing required at the Woody is. Now, granted, all the players will come in and get a lift in on Monday. But it's exhausting, Again, I'm not trying to be I'm just being realistic. When your body's beat up and you feel like crap and you've played 10 games already and you gotta go play a night game on the road, it's tough. And, you try to optimize your recovery, optimize your rest, and optimize your routine. So a noon game, when you're a player, man, you wake up, you eat your breakfast, and it's time to go play ball. You don't have to sit around in the hotel all day. So there's my diatribe, Nevada. So how big of a baby am I? Please let me have it.
No, I actually think I try to be fair on this. I think I'm totally with you. The idea of playing Akron or whatever on these stupid BTN games at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whatever it is, I think I think it's ridiculous. I think those games are special. I think that should be reserved for, or I should say, those game times are special and should be reserved for those great epic, USC Ohio State,
Yeah.
Texas Ohio State, whatever those big games are. I mean, some of the best games I've ever been to at the stadium have all been night games.
Yeah.
But the game last year, I believe I think I'm going to trust you to say it was the Akron game, but whatever that game was, that made me want to throw up. That was so awful that game was at night. I was embarrassed. It was embarrassing, and Big Ten Network's got to be better than that, because I think you do devalue the night game when you do that. It's those are supposed to be premier games, by definition and for a reason, and when you just throw trash up there, I think it devalues the product.
I agree. I think it's got to be special. The night game is, it's better when it's special. It's better because, again, you think about the NFL, the night games are generally special. The Thursday night game, not so much. They try to spread that around because that's a miserable experience to play a football game on Thursday night after you play Sunday. But, you think Sunday night football, there's a reason why they have flex scheduling and they could move teams into the Sunday night game, because that's the prime time NBC, the highest quality, high definition television, because their games look incredibly crystal clear. I'm really excited that NBC is starting to do Big Ten games, because I think that they have the best HD product there is. And then Monday Night Football, it's always big games. They don't put, the Texans versus the Carolina Panthers on Monday Night Football just because you're watching the two worst teams in the league, or the Chicago Bears last year. But like I said, I just when you have a night game, you're sitting in that hotel all day, and with Urban, we used to have 4 extra walkthroughs during the day because of I was coaching then, because that's what you do, because you don't have anything else for the players to do. So they do all these extra walkthroughs that they don't really need. Or with the noon game, it's get up and rock. It's get up and go. And most people are productive in the middle of the day. You get up, have your coffee, and then you go work for 8 hours. So you're usually working from 8 to 4, 8 to 5, whatever it is, and that's kind of what football is. If you can get up and eat some breakfast and then go play a football game, knock it out, you're good. You get that win, get to go feel good, get to go see your family after the game, go grab some dinner, grab a couple cocktails, take a little nap, go out with your boys, downtown Columbus. That's the optimal setup. When you're an 8 o'clock kickoff against Akron, the game's not over till midnight, and you don't get back to your car till 1. And then, you're eating at Steak and Shake or Waffle House because most of the good places are closed. So you can't see your family. Good.
No, but let me ask you a question. I want to ask you. I've wondered about this, and I wanted to kind of pick your brain on this. You coached with Meyer, you played with Tressel, et cetera, et cetera. If you had to boil it down to one thing or two things, whatever it is, Urban Meyer's record in rivalry games and big games and whatever, as an underdog, is just so incredibly gaudy that it can't be random. It can't just be a random distribution that he wins 90% of the time in these big game types of situations. If you had to boil it down to one thing, why is Urban Meyer such a great big game, rivalry game coach, and why does he win those games in a disproportionate share of the time?
Is just the absolute ultimate motivator. Greatest motivator maybe in the history of football. He's a guy that if there's a stop to pull out, he's pulling it out. Again, I think back to when they waxed us when he was at Florida. It's we got fed all this crap about how we're fast and how good we are and we've got so much speed, and he was just that was throwing that was throwing jet fuel on the fire for him, and he's the kind of guy he'll put he'll tape he taped the Antonio Smith, who was our walk-on corners who started that game. He taped his jersey to the ground, and he would have Percy Harvin and Lewis Murphy and Bubba Caldwell, other receivers who were really, really good players that played a long time. They would walk across it and wipe their cleats on it every day they came in from practice. He would make up quotes and put them all across the locker room. ESPN says this, and Sports Illustrated says this, and Sporting News says this, and 98% of them were made up. But it would be there's no way that Florida can handle the offensive line of Ohio State. There's no way that they can handle the speed of, so again, and then he did the same thing at Ohio State when you're going to play Bama. Everyone picks Bama to win. Chris Carter literally said on ESPN, he said, that we might die when we play Alabama. Like I had that clip, and he said like the Buckeye born and bred, and then Tom Jackson said Roll Tide, and then said we might be dead or something like that. He said. So it was sort of like even Chris Carter, who's like one of the greatest Buckeyes ever, said something crazy like Bama's going to kill us. I forgot the exact quote, and I was like stunned when he said like something like I watched a lot of film of that Bama team, and Auburn was kicking them up and down the field. And I want to swear there, but I don't want to get banged by YouTube. But I mean, they were whooping them, and I was like, that ain't a great Bama team. Like I think they're good. I think Amari Cooper is great. I think Derrick Henry obviously is fantastic, but like. Defensively, those guys were getting rocked by Auburn, and I thought, with because again, I had my guys at Taylor and Elfline and Billy Price, and I'm sending them these clips. I'm like, guys, like you can kill these guys. I still have the film. Like, I mean, these guys are getting launched, so just eat your Wheaties and don't be scared of the big bad Bama because here's Reese Dismukes, who was the Remington winner from Auburn. Killing their interior guys. I'm talking like a 7-yard pancake down the middle of the field. So, and they gave up like 600 yards or something crazy to Auburn, and Auburn was even good. So, people were acting like they were this invincible object like they were a few years earlier, and they weren't. Like again, I just look at the film. I don't care about the jerseys. I don't care about who's on the sideline. I don't care, if they've got the number on the side of the helmet like Bama does. Like I just look at the film and like I say, okay, we have a chance. Okay, we don't have a chance. I thought. Going into the Georgia game, I thought we had a really good chance because, Georgia was really good this year, but they were nowhere near as good as they were in 2021 and defensively, not even close. And we proved it. We scored 40-something points against them, and 99% of the time in the history of Ohio State, if you score 40-something points, you're going to win the game. We just happen to be in the 1% where we lost the game. So, but I just think Urban's the ultimate motivator, and it's not just players, it's coaches, it's training staff. I mean, he is hell on wheels when he shows up, man. And it is no joke when you're working for that guy. And I love him. Like, I love him to death. I think he's one of the greatest coaches ever. I learned so much about everything from that guy, like how to work, how to grind, how to everything. But the motivational thing was just a spectacle to behold. Like, because that's what he does, man. And he keeps everybody on point. Everybody's on the edge of their seat, not in a fun way. Not like you're, I don't know, like, I mean, you're getting ready to go into the gulag when you go work for Urban because it's tough. Every day is tough. Every day is fourth and an inch, but he makes you better, man. You don't have a choice but to be great when you're around a guy like Urban. We got a super chat. I want to hit this before. Do you have anything, Nevada? And then we'll get to the super chat.
Well, no, I was just going to say, in this era of deep fakes and everything else like that, man, you could really come up with some juicy quotes or some stuff that you wanted to show.
Oh my God.
No, seriously. It's like you have Harbaugh coming out there and be like, Ohio State's a bunch of babies and, they can't come up here and play. And I'm embarrassed that we even have to play these guys. And, I mean, it may not even be a real thing. But anyway, to the super chat.
That is one of the best things you've ever said. Because I'm telling you, like that, if Urban had the deep fake stuff right now, oh my God. He'd have Kirk Herbstreit saying craziness about Ohio State. He'd have Kirby Smart, some kid had his cell phone in the locker room saying Ohio State's a bunch of pansies, whatever. Like, I mean, Urban would have been off the chain because he loves media and that kind of stuff. But, I'm just telling you, he would have had a field day with that. So, D. Sonny, again, appreciate you, my man. Can you think of any big game situation / Justin that a head coach made that shows how there are levels to the profession? Wow, what a great question. Nevada, do you want to take this first or do you want me to take a crack at it? Because I just spoke for like 10 straight minutes.
Man, I mean, yeah, it's a great question. And I have to really think about that. We got to think about that. I mean, I really have to, I know that, I don't know. It's a great question. It's got my mind racing right now. I'm sure we'll come up with some great strategic moments of all time. I've generally looked at things like this in terms of overall strategy or game plan or anything like that. But I'm thinking about this question in terms of like specific moments. Is that what we're asking for? Like specific moments in a game?
Yeah, like one that I thought of. This is going to bring up any sort of fond memories. Is that 2019 Clemson game where Dabo Sweeney and his boy Venables, they switched Isaiah Simmons from being a box player to being a deep safety, and that changed everything because we were dog walking those guys, and then all of a sudden they switched Isaiah Simmons, who might have been the best defender in the country other than Chase Young that year, They switched him back, and then all of a sudden, like, it was like they turned the faucet off. And obviously, J.K. Dobbins getting hurt, that was huge too. But that's one where there's levels to it. I think that when you look at how certain teams switch coverages up, how they defend certain things, there's levels to it. How much you drill and prepare your players. Again, super famous play that's been broken down a million times was when the Seahawks were on the 1 yard line. And the Patriots guy, Malcolm Butler, had been drilled by the advanced scouts from the Patriots and by the card work, which is like the scout team stuff. Hey, they like to run this stack formation, and the front guy pushes, and then the guy he does a little slant, and he jumped it and got the pick and won the Super Bowl just because of there's levels to coaching. Like Bill Belichick and his defensive staff drilled that to death. And the kid pulled the trigger and made the play. He jumped a route that, was really hard to defend. It's something that, it made a lot of teams look stupid that year, the way they ran that with two really good receivers, and having a point guy and a guy who's stacked behind him. But any other,
the 2002, the game plan, the offensive game plan in the 2018 Michigan game, when we, just the 62 or 63 point explosion game or whatever, when we were running those crossing routes, and then we went to those mesh routes where they went there and then broke outside instead of continuing across the line. I mean, it was just like we were, whether you give that credit to Ryan Day or whether you give it to Urban Meyer or a combination of the two, I thought that was one of the greatest pieces of offensive coaching that I've ever seen in a big game. That was something. I don't think I've ever seen anything before or since. I thought the performance against Clemson, when we got Clemson back, I thought Ryan Day's offensive calling that day was unbelievable. I mean, from everything from running up. I liked it. This is one of my favorite unsung plays, and probably nobody else even remembers this play. But I don't know why this one's always stayed with me. But they went to the line, and then they looked to the sideline, like they're looking at the sideline to get a call, and then they went just right to the line really fast and did a quarterback sneak with Justin Fields and picked up like 5 yards. And I was thinking, that is one of the greatest play calls that I've ever seen right there, because Clemson was completely caught off guard, had no idea that was coming, and I love stuff like that. I tend to think about it more on the offensive side than the defensive side, but when you see an offense cooking, it's a sight to behold.
Yeah, and like with Tress, like that 06 Michigan game was just a virtuoso performance, because I think about the short yardage play we ran where we hurried to the line and we put Ted Ginnett, the third tight end. We had like I want to say 8 guys across the line. Then we had the quarterback, the fullback, and Beanie in the backfield. And it was a fake run on 2nd and 1 or something crazy like that. And we threw it deep to Ted. And we had Ted get down on a 3-point stance. I don't think he'd ever been a 3-point stance in his life, because his 3-point stance is so terrible. But he went deep and they didn't see him. They couldn't find him. And it was already too late, because the safety took one step up and Ted was at full stride and he got dusted. But I think, for Urban, getting ready for that Oregon game, in 14 for the championship, he had all the defensive players lose weight, lose 5 to 10 pounds, because he's like, look, these guys go fast. If you're leaner, you're lighter, your conditioning will be better. We don't need you guys gassed. We're playing in a dome. It's something that people never talk about is like, when you play in a dome, it's physically exhausting because you don't get a breeze. It's that stagnant air. And, there's a big push to hydrate when you're in a dome, because when you're in a dome and it's an 80,000 seat dome and you've got all those people and they're watching, like, it gets hot in that thing. I don't know if people realize that, when they don't have that roof open, it's like you're in an air fryer, so these guys, lose weight, hydrate. And, Oregon was running plays like every, 15 seconds or whatever, 22 seconds or whatever the number was. Is like, that's what they did the entire bowl prep, get ready for that, is they were running 2 different scout teams. Normally a scout team is like all the backups and redshirt freshmen and all that. They run a scout team. For Oregon, they ran 2 scout teams. They had, normally like you hold a card up when you're the scout team guy and says, okay, O-line, this is what you got. Receivers, here's your routes. To emulate Oregon's speed, they had, guys that weren't on the full coaching staff. Like, okay, you're coaching the left receivers, you're coaching the right receivers, you're coaching the backs, you're coaching the line. And they rehearsed it so that it could be just like a wicked fast pace because they wanted him to be ready. And so, I mean, Urban had him lose weight. He had him this rhythmic, scout teamwork. So, I mean, that's where there's levels. I don't know if coaches think like that, but you do everything you can to enhance that pace and get ready for that pace. So when it happens on game day, those guys are prepared for it. So those are some really good ones. Yeah, again, Stu, this is a great one. Saban benching Hurts for Tua in the national championship. Go ahead.
What about Tressel punting from the 29-yard line? What about that one?
What was that, like Penn State? I can't remember that game.
I don't remember the game, but I remember the situation and thinking, wow, that's amazing.
Bet the under, baby. That's all we
bet the under.
Bet the under. You put on the 29-yard line. It's like bet the under. Trying to see what else. Appreciate you, Neil. The 411 dudes. Again, I love. That's like my favorite. I'm gonna name another podcast that. This is an interesting question, Jay Baggs. Is Ryan Day too soft on players because he fears how it may affect their mental health, considering what he dealt with in his own personal life? Not to mention the Harry Miller situation. Nevada, do you want to take a crack at that?
Well, I mean, I think there's something to that. I think that Ryan. I think that the Harry Miller situation was bad. I think that as big a fan of Stud as I am, I think he missed some signs that were there. And I think when you're the position coach, I mean, you're responsible for your guys, and you can't miss signs of mental distress in a player when you're the position coach. And frankly, when people ask me, why do I think Stud is the head coach, or excuse me, the line coach at Ohio State anymore? I'm like, well, Justin Fry was his best friend and available, and or he really mismanaged the Harry Miller situation. So I think that is definitely something for Ryan that he's really concerned about. I think it's always going to be a balance for him because he is not Urban Meyer. He's not ruthless. He is not a guy that's going to go and just push everybody to the edge and drive them to greatness. But I think he's finding his own way. I've said this several times. I think he kind of found himself in the bowl prep. I thought his bowl prep, edge was spot on for a team that was kind of teetering on the edge in terms of confidence. I think the fact that he was able to get them back and get us right there, punch for punch with Georgia to win the national championship is really that's a tribute to Day all the way. That would have been a very easy game for Ohio State to go in there and just get the slobber knocked out of them and have everybody go, oh, there you go, Ohio State is who we thought they were. And Dave pulled them together, and he didn't, and he wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy, bowl prep. I mean, he was tougher, and I think he's kind of figuring that out. I think he likes who that is, and I think he's gonna, kind of hone that edge here as we get into 2023. So I think it's going to be kind of, he'll always be sensitive to those mental health implications, but I think he's going to be a little bit tougher, and I think it's going to benefit Ohio State.
Yeah, and I think that to be fair to Ryan, I think it's also more difficult to be as ruthless as Urban was just because of the portal. I mean, you say the wrong thing to a kid now. Kids are sensitive. These kids all have agents. It's really easy to back channel these programs and say, hey, our second team running back got yelled at by Ryan Day today and Tony Alford, and they said some mean stuff. Do you have a spot for him at Auburn or Florida or Miami or wherever? Like, I mean, it's, you better know the kid. You better have a relationship with the kid. You better have a really deep trust with the kid before you really go in on a kid, because kids are sensitive. I mean, these kids have options now, man. It's like being a coach. Like, Todd Monken, Kirby Smart's OC, who beat us and won the national championship. Like, he had the option to go to the Ravens this year, and guess what? He took it, and he could have been coaching Dylan Raiola for the next 3 years and, playing at Georgia where you have the best players in the country right now. And he said, nope, I'm out. See ya. So, coaches have always had the option to leave when they had opportunity or when they didn't like their boss or who they were working for. And, and now players do. So, I mean, it's, there's a lot of coaches that left working for Urban Meyer because he's not easy to work for. And that's not a bad thing, because Nick Saban's not easy to work for either. He's tough to work for. And that's part of the reason why they're great and why they drive everybody around them to be great, because it is it's an earthquake every time they walk in the room, so you better be ready for it. You better be strapped up. And, but now with the way the portal is and the way kids are sensitive, and you say the wrong thing, you ride a kid too hard, man, he's liable to jump in the taxi and head to the airport. So, in all fairness to Ryan, I think it's a much tougher deal than it used to be. But I also think that, the team needs to be tougher. Like, I don't think that the toughness is, especially 2 years ago, they weren't tough. They were better this past year. You get Cade Stover, you gotta pick captains that play. Like, that's like a big thing is like, you can't have a couple guys that don't play. Obviously Cam Babb, fantastic captain, a guy that's torn his knee a couple times. He doesn't count, but if you have guys that are healthy and active and they don't play at all, that's not good. That's no bueno. See what else we got. Again, you guys are killing it with the questions tonight. I love the stuff. All the Ole Miss guys are soft. I like that, Ashley. Tywone Malone is a guy, he's 80 inches of arm, so he's like a pterodactyl essentially. But he hasn't done anything in 2 years at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss has stunk on defense. What are your projections for him, Nevada? I mean, I think he's going to be the number 4 tackle. I don't think he's better than Mike Hall or Tyleek. He surely hasn't produced like that, but with Larry Johnson in the fold now, and plus our offense will score a zillion points, so we'll have a lot of pass rush opportunities. What are your projections for what we can get out of Tywone Malone?
I think he's a project. I think the biggest thing, though, is the fact that he's football only now. And, up until now, you talk to people down in Ole Miss, and the baseball thing really was, that's a time suck, and that takes a lot of time, and that's an energy suck, and it takes, a lot of things away from the primary objective of being a great football player. And I think Ohio State's going to get the best subject and thing possible, which is football only, Larry Johnson coaching him, going to be in a situation where he doesn't have to come in and contribute right away. So I think he's a project, but I think, longer term, I think he's going to be a contributor for Ohio State and going to be a good player for us. Like I said, it's hard to, predict immediate greatness for somebody who hasn't done anything in a couple of years, but I think we're going to see his best football's ahead of him. And I think dropping baseball was big.
I agree. I think it's really, really stupid to try and play both, because I think it's just impossible. I don't think that, again, I'm a big advocate of strength training the right way, resting your body, having that off season to really crank your academics up. Cause that's the problem is like, when you're a football player, like, winter, that spring semester, when you don't have games, you can really load up on the credits. If you're a guy that's trying to graduate early and be the prototype, like Paris Johnson is, probably has the greatest mom who's ever lived and is the prototype, because that kid enrolled early and graduated in 3 years, went 6 overall in the draft, and was a first-team All-American. So he checked every box, and he should have been a captain. It was asinine that he wasn't a captain last year. But, I always tell guys, I'm like, look, the one thing I know about, like, when you go to the NFL or you're done playing or whatever is you don't want to be the guy that's in the NFL that has to go back to school, even if it's online school. Like, you might as well, while you're here, just knock out your degree, get it done. So in the winter quarter and summer, just load up on credits, because then you can take a little bit lighter of a load in the fall when you're traveling and you're playing games and you're stressed out because you're playing games on Sunday. Like I never cared about failing a chemistry test or a math test when I had to play Penn State or Michigan on Saturday. Like it didn't even register. I mean, I obviously I 3.5 GPA, so I didn't fail many tests, but like I just. If it's study for another hour for a chemistry exam or go to bed for another hour to get another hour of sleep to be ready to play Michigan, like I'm sleeping. I'm sorry. But in the off season, you can really crush it, load it up, and get a lot of work done. So, but when you're playing baseball, you can't, because then you're traveling with the baseball team. You're going, to these 50 games you're playing or whatever, and you're going to Florida for some opening weekend tournament in January. So, that's why I thought it was stupid. Unless you're even Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, like guys that are fantastic football players, average baseball players, it's tough, so it'll be exciting to see what he does with a full regimen of Larry Johnson, the pass rush opportunities you're going to get at Ohio State, because we're going to be leading 95% of the time versus these teams we play this year, because our schedule isn't really that great. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with his pass rush opportunities and if he can crack the rotation and push a guy like Hero Kanu, because Hero Kanu's trying to play this year, man. He had a great spring game. He was a force, and like this guy showing up. A lot of people are putting him in ink as the number 40 tackle. But if I'm Hero Canoe, man, I'm like, screw you, dude. I'm taking the spot and I'm going to be in the rotation ahead of you. So it'll be interesting. Another D Sonny. Appreciate you, my man. Why do you think everybody gets excited about legacy recruits even if they aren't highly ranked? Is it a nostalgic feeling? D Sonny, man, you're killing me. I mean, these are great questions. Nevada, your thoughts on that? We've had a lot of legacies recently, the Borans, the Styles, Richard McNutt's kid is likely to come here. Why do people get excited about the nostalgia?
Well, I mean, that's a real thing. I mean, it's a real thing. It's the brain, triggering emotions and feelings that you had previously about something. It could be like a familiar aroma that you have, or some sort of food that you have an association with, or a song that reminds you of a girl from long ago, or whatever it is. I mean, that's a real thing with people in terms of when you have a positive association about some sort of a memory. A great legacy player like that, then you automatically associate those same attributes to the legacy recruit. So I think it's not an imaginary thing. That's a real thing that we experience every day in all aspects of life, and also look, football, like all other games, it's like when you bet horse racing. Horse racing is all about bloodlines. Now Michael Jordan's kid, it wasn't Michael Jordan, and Bronny James isn't Bronny, but kids are good for a reason, and you see it in hockey all the time. You see it in basketball. You see it in football. Marvin Harrison Jr. He's like Marvin Harrison Sr., only 6'5". So it's like,
Yeah.
you imagine all the good attributes and this big, huge, fast body right there. So no, I think the legacy recruit thing is a real thing, and but it all starts in the brain.
Yeah, I agree. I think part of it is if a guy's really prolific, like Keith Byers' kid came up a few years ago, we passed on him. Jim Lachey's kid came up a few years ago, we passed on him, sent him to Iowa. You hope that they're close to a chip off the old block. Like Jim Lachey's an All-American. Keith Byers obviously could have won the Heisman. We got the Styles brothers here now. Obviously Lorenzo Sr. was an NFL player, played on the Greatest Show on Turf team, won a Super Bowl. Had a nice NFL career. So you hope that they're something close to that. And, if you're Sonny Styles, you might even exceed the old man. Because I think that everyone's really excited about Sonny. Sonny's a legit 5-star, maybe the best athlete on the entire team right now. But again, there's no guarantee. Like you said, Michael Jordan's kids they were walk-ons in college, and they'd never played a lick of any sort of pro basketball. So, I think it just depends on what's the kid's makeup, what's his genetics. Did the guy, like we have Orlando Pace's kid on the team, and he's a walk-on, which is fine, but Orlando is probably the best player in school history. He is the best player in school history, and his other son is a tight end. So we're not getting, if we get that tight end to commit, you're not getting the next Orlando Pace, that's for sure, just because Orlando is a one-of-one generational galaxy type talent. So you're not going to get. It's cool to see a Pace on the back of a shirt, but you ain't getting Orlando. I mean, Orlando's, like I said, he's the phenom. But I don't know. That's a great question. I think it is part nostalgia, but I also think that it's a hope that they are what their dads were, especially when it's, Orlando. If I said, hey, if you guys had no idea, if your brain was left, and said, hey, Orlando Pace's kid is getting recruited by Ohio State, you're hoping he's Paris Johnson, basically. He's a superstar left tackle dominator like his dad was, but his son's a tight end, so he's a totally different makeup, totally different player, just like Luke Lachey and Jim Lachey. Jim Lachey, All-American tackle, played for the Hogs in Washington, had a fantastic NFL career. So, block Bruce Smith every weekend, or when he's in the league, when they would play Buffalo a lot. And, that's what you hope his son was. And his son ends up being a tight end. There's nothing wrong with that. But, you hope for the nostalgia, but you also hope they could replicate the production of the father. Well, we're going to wrap this. We got Game 7 going on in hockey, so we're going to go watch that. But Nevada, any final thoughts as we wrap this thing up? And appreciate you guys.
No, just excited to see Aaron Nolan out at the Elite 11 here out in California. That's going to be a lot of fun. I think we got the right one. I think despite the kind of the gymnastics that went on with the quarterback derby, I think we got the right guy, and I can't wait to see him in person.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fantastic. So it's gonna be really, really good stuff. And like I said, Nevada has a great attitude when it comes to recruits. just get excited about all the commitments because sometimes you just never know who's going to turn into our next superstar. So we're going to wrap this thing. As always, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Again, great questions, great comments. Just fantastic stuff again from you guys. So we appreciate it. You guys and gals. Thank you, Sue. Thank you to our regulars, D Sunny, Dave. Shout out Naples, Florida, baby. I saw Naples, Florida on there. When I say shout out where you're from, I mean it. Shout out where you're from. Again, we had Alaska, we had Mexico City. I mean, you guys are everywhere, so we appreciate you guys so much. With that being said, if you guys could leave us a like on the way out the door, that'd be huge. Also, again, shout out where you're from in the comments. Comment, what recruit made you the most excited when they committed to Ohio State? I'd love to know. Again, I love just kind of these little questions I can ask you guys. You guys give us some great answers, so we appreciate that as always. Click subscribe. Send this out to your homies, your homegirls, everybody. Send this link out. Appreciate you guys. And click that alert bell. If you like these live ones and you want to see when we go live, click the alert bell. You'll see every time we go live. So appreciate you guys. As always, continue to shout out where you're from. Again, even if you did it yesterday, do it every day because I think it's sweet and I love to give you guys shout outs. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. And thank you, Scoop Family. I'm about to go jump on BuckeyeScoop.com. If you guys aren't members there, you guys are crazy because it is an absolute blast. It is a party nonstop on BuckeyeScoop.com. So we're bringing some really great content. I had a great talk with Bill Green for about an hour today, and he's got some stuff revved up, ready to go on the recruiting front. So you guys want to be tuned into that. So as always, we appreciate you guys. So you guys have a good night. Go Bucks.